Hello and welcome to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined as always by my good friend and co-host Mark Etheridge, also joined today by ESPN's Chris Burke, college baseball analyst, also Louisville area sports dad, Chris Burke. Wears a number of hats. We will jump into a whole bunch of topics with Chris Burke here in just a minute. But first, I have to let you know that this episode of Highway to Hoover and every episode of Highway to Hoover is brought to you by Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy-to-use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level. See pitchlogic.com for more information. Berkey, before we get into any of the actual SEC baseball stuff here, based on how old your boys are, how long are they away from maybe beating you on the basketball court or something? Like, are you worried about that yet? How many years do you think you have before you go down in one-on-one to one of your kids?
I think I can hang on to one-on-one maybe like 2 more years.
Okay.
I definitely have 1 more year. My oldest boy is he'll turn 15 at the end of next month. Mm-hmm. And he's catching me in height, but he's got about 50 pounds to go in weight. So I can still muscle him. But like last year, I actually had to like try to guard him. So this year will be even harder. But I still think I got a couple years to be able to bully him. So, you know, but
so maybe
it's coming to an end. It's coming to an end.
Yeah, this is where you can like see the dynasty starting to cut, but they're still winning games. They're still grinding out wins, you know.
That's
like
right.
You're going to have to do the old man. You're going to start backing him down a little more, just up and unders, things like
and
that.
just like fouling on purpose.
Yep. Right. So physical fouling.
That's right.
I got a story on that.
Okay.
Me and my dad used to run, like run distances, and I was using it for conditioning for football. And we would run together, and he was a lot better runner than I was, but he would kind of run at my pace when I would go with him. And then at the end, say the last quarter mile, we would sprint to the finish. And he would let me get ahead, and he would always pass me. He would always catch me. And then one day, I don't know, I was probably 15. He didn't. And that was the last time we ran. He said, "You got me. You got me. You
Dad
took the
packed
title,
it in.
right? We're done."
And that was it. He was good.
That was it. He said, "If we run again, we're not sprinting. We're done."
Mr. Etheridge took his running shoes and went home for good.
Right.
Man. Let's get into some of this stuff here, Berkey. We want to touch on a number of topics. I mean, first of all, Mark and I have talked about this, but I'm curious your take. Mark and I have spent a lot of time talking about the new scholarship rules with the 34 allowable, all that stuff. Is there a part, because I'm sure you've heard about this, talked about this, thought about this a lot. Is there a part of this that maybe we're not talking enough about, something that's in your head about, here's something we're not thinking about, here's something that's going to complicate this, from your perspective of having been inside that and having dealt with this for a long time? Do you got anything there for us that maybe we're not thinking about as far as this goes?
Well, maybe I need to hear exactly what you guys have hit on so far, because I haven't hopped on the podcast in a while.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Mark. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, the big question is, okay, so 34 is allowed, but what's the real number, right? What are the SEC teams going to do? And what's the difference between the SEC and some of the other leagues that we know aren't going to give the maximum? And then the other side of that is, okay, so you're allowed to give these full scholarships, but now you have a roster cap. And what does that mean? And from a recruiting standpoint, does that mean that those players that would have gone to a power program, do they filter down? If so, is that because of, when is that 34 countable? Is it pre-fall practice? Is it post-fall practice? We don't really know yet. Those are the kinds of unanswered questions that, we've been kind of debating, giving pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
Love to get your insight on it.
Yeah, I think it'll be 34. Honestly, when I say I think it'll be 34, I mean pre-fall. Like, I think the schools are going to mandate you're only getting 34 baseball players on campus. I think, to me, that seems like the whole point. Like, if you're basically saying we're trying to eliminate walk-ons for the purposes of collecting as many players as you'd like, why would they give them to the February date that we've been working off of to set their roster. I think that kind of spits in the face of what feels to be the purpose. And what's interesting, I was actually down in Georgia at Lake Point for my oldest boy that we were just talking about, was part of that junior futures game deal. And the senior futures game deal, which is where all the coaches were camped out watching the rising class of juniors in our country, because all of them can now be recruited, started August 1st. They were all there. Like every Power 5 school had at least 2, if not the maximum number, which is 4 coaches at this event. So I was able to catch up with a lot of people, and it was literally the week all this news broke. And so I think predictably, those that are winning currently don't want it to change. And not to make the coaches sound callous, but especially since we've started NIL, like I think the coaches look at it and go, well, the kids have already figured out a way to pay for school, and we're helping them now more than ever. I don't know that the 34 scholarship moves the needle in the coaches' room the way it would have 5 years ago. They would have been jumping for joy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they look at it now like, we haven't had a problem getting kids to campus. The game's never been better. It's never been more talented. And the current rules have been what they have for the last 3 years. So I think the coaches were more upset about the cap of 34 than they were happy about increased scholarships. I think that was very clear. And similar to when they stopped allowing 7th, 8th, 9th grade commitments, the coaches who are currently crushing the industry why would they want anything to change, right? So the guys that were doing really good at early commitments didn't like the fact that rule changed. And I think the schools that are currently operating with 45 to 55 players on campus in the fall don't want this to change. But it is. And so I always get fascinated by, who adjusts best to the new landscape. And I do think your evaluations are going to matter more. That being said, what I'm worried most about is the current draft date. Okay, let's just be hypothetical. Okay, we'll use just probably fill in the blank SEC school. Okay, let's just say top 10 SEC school. You can fill in the blank with any number of those regular characters. Okay, let's just say today you have 50 kids on your campus. Like literally as we speak, you have 50 kids that are participating in your baseball workouts today. All right, so by next year, you only will have 34 of them. All right, well, we all know that by the end of the fall semester, you will have told, let's say you have 50, you will have told probably 10 of those that they need to go play JUCO, right? 10 of those. So then you come back in the winter with 40. Okay, so 40 of those come back. And then middle of February, you have to tell like 35 of them you're on our official roster. And then 27 of you get to travel, like when conference play starts. You know what I mean? So there's already that whittling down number that takes place to a degree. But then the season happens, and then, half a dozen go into the portal, you get a half a dozen, and then you're sitting there looking at the draft going, well, 5 of these kids may come back. They may not. We'd like them to come back. 5 of our incoming freshmen may get drafted. They may not. And meanwhile, you have to wait till all that dust settles to figure out where you're at as it pertains to 34. And then classes start in 3 weeks.
Yeah. And on top of that, the portal's closed.
And the portal's that's right. Portal's
right.
closed.
So and that was where I was going next. I mean, because one, you're waiting to see, okay, what about the draft? Well, first you're waiting to see, okay, portal. Okay, guys jump in the portal.
Who you get.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
All of that. Then you have the draft. Then you have the signing deadline, and all of that happens after the portal has closed.
Right. There's still names in there. There's still names in it.
Right.
But so what are your options? Well, this is what is going to happen. they are all going to have a contingency plan that says everything goes our way. We have this many people, which let's just say everything goes their way. Back to the, fill in the blank SEC school. Everything goes their way, meaning they get all their high school kids that they want to get. Some of their, juniors or fourth-year seniors that maybe have a year of eligibility left or whatever, fourth-year juniors decide to come back or whatever. Now they're going to have 39 people on the roster. Well, that's a good problem for them, but 5 kids get told, we do not have a place for you to go, and you have about 3 weeks to figure out.
Right.
Now, so from that standpoint, I feel like the NCAA would almost have to lengthen the window to go in the portal because you got to give those kids somewhere to go.
But the problem is everyone else has already set their roster. So who's going to pick those guys up? Then you continue perpetually cutting. Right?
It's just there's a trickle down to the cuts. But either way, well, and then the other side of that is, let's say it all goes terribly wrong again from the school's perspective, and somehow they only have 32 left.
Yeah.
Or 31 left, whatever. Okay, well, now I got to see what's still in, because the portal's closed to enter into it, but there's still people in the portal, right? So there's still names to grab. So then you have to decide, do we want to grab 3 kids that maybe we're not crazy about? Do we want to go at it with 31 people? Like, these are the things that I'm fascinated to see. But I think we all know how it's going to shake out. They're all going to have way more than they're supposed to have, and they're going to end up with some awful conversations at the end of July. That's just the way it's going to go. Price of doing business.
And then those players, really the only options they have that, some of them can go JC depending on where they are in their career, or they got to go down, right? Or they can stay in school and try again next year.
Yeah, which for players of that caliber, that's probably not going to happen. So those are the dilemmas that, the coaches are hammering their administrators about to try to work through. But, the flip side of that is you give them 40 and then they make those cuts in February. And then, those six kids are flinging in the wind in February. At some point, people are going to get bad news. Like that, it's unavoidable part of the industry.
That's right. We talked a little bit about the portal there, Burke, because I feel like there's a little bit of a knock-on effect here. Perhaps Mark and I have been talking about how the portal just wasn't as buzzy this year, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I think less chaos may be a good thing here. There were good players in the portal, but we didn't have a Tommy White bombshell, a Paul Skeens bombshell, pick your player there. There was a chance that happened with A&M when Schloss leaves, but that didn't happen. Any theories? Mark and I have talked about, nobody's getting caught flat-footed by the portal anymore. Everybody kind of understands you got to re-recruit your roster, yada, yada. Other than that, any theories as to why maybe the portal has slowed down? Do you think it's a one-off, or do you think maybe this is things finding its level, perhaps?
I think the NIL programs for all the major contenders are healthy enough to keep their best players. I think that's what it's boiled down to. I think if, let's just say Justin LeBron, even at a place like Alabama, I think 2 years ago, Alabama would probably have not been prepared to keep Justin LeBron. I think today they are, I also think that in college baseball, no matter what the portal offers you from NIL, let's just say, your current school can give you $100,000 and there's another school that wants to offer you $200,000. I think maybe the agents and, the coaches are always good at selling things like, okay, you're going to leave a place you're comfortable and thriving for $100,000 more dollars. When the reality is, if you just play great this year and you've proven you can play great here because the system and the environment and the development, all those kinds of things, you're going to make $5 million in the draft or $3 million. Like, are we really we're going to leave a situation that's very comfortable to us for $100,000? Now, if you were making zero, you might leave for $100,000. But if you're making $100,000, are you going to leave for $200,000? Like, I think that's very general and generic, but I do think that's some of what's going on. Is I just think 2 years ago, 10 teams, 15 teams had real money to offer. Today, I think 30 teams or 25 teams have. And so because of that, you're not seeing as much monster Power 5. There's Gavin Keelan left.
Andrew Fisher.
Andrew Fisher left. That's right. And the left-handed arm from Ole Miss, which is another, you get some of that. Yeah, Doyle. There was a few, but I do think, and I think also the rising junior class isn't as attractive this year as in years past too.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. The rising junior class is, I think, a little, at least from the Power 5 perspective, not on the level as the 2 previous years. So there might have just been some coaches out there that when they heard some of the asking prices were like, no, I'm
sticker
not paying
shock.
that. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So that's a couple of my theories.
Yeah. You mentioned that the really strong junior class we had this year, that, they went into the draft. Who do you think's the first one to reach the big leagues? I mean, we had Langford last year, Shamuel. Obviously, look what Skeens has done. Who's that next guy?
Well, it sure feels like it's Christian Moore, right?
Doesn't it?
Number one, he's destroying the league. But
Double A
2,
pitching already.
Yeah. Number 2, he's playing for an organization that's out of it and has proven that they move players fast. So he would have to be where the smart money would lie as far as that's concerned. I was looking at Baseball America's list today of, the hot prospect sheet. You look at it, like 3 of the top 15 are major college, or 4 of the top 15 maybe were major college stars from the last, either this draft or the year before. I just think in general, people feel these kids are more ready. And so in general, I think we're going to see shorter minor league stints. Back in my day, they always used to say things like, every hitter needs 1,000 minor league at bats, or every pitcher needs, 200 minor league innings, and these kinds of things. And those things just don't exist anymore. And so I think you look at how big and strong and experienced these guys are. And by no means am I trying to say that, day in and day out, the SEC's Double A. But Christian Moore, okay, if you want to call us a generation apart, I don't know if that's the right amount of math, but whatever. He's faced way more pitching on a Double A level on a daily basis, or at least a weekend basis, than I faced when I got to Double A. Like I had seen some, but he's seen it way more than I had. So because of that, and he's been playing with a bat and with either the college bat or the wooden bat, that is a much more apples to apples product than the product we played with as well. So I think for all those reasons, I think the modern, whether it's Condon, whether it's Caglione, whether it's Moore, a Blake Burke, you look on the pitching side of it, Dolander and Skeens, and I think we all probably agree Burns and Smith will have very short stints in the mind. Like those kids they just feel like the training, the coaching, the development, it's so much closer to the major league. I mean, it's not the major league product, but it's so much closer to it now that I just don't think the learning curve, and there's the method or the philosophies have changed in Pro Bowl too. Like they're no longer stuck in some of those old school ways of thinking as well.
Yeah. You mentioned the rising junior class, and not all these guys I'll mention are in the junior class, but I'm kind of curious here if anybody from this pitching group excites you, and I'll throw out some names just so you're not trying to grab them out of thin air, but we've got Ryan Prager back. So, okay, Prager got it. But we're looking at guys with injury history, like maybe Chase Shores, AJ Russell. We've got some guys who have not been starters for a full season yet, like Colton Smith, Gabe Gackle. We've got new guys to the SEC, Kyson Witherspoon from Oklahoma, Zach Root, transfer from East Carolina, a guy like Shane Sadeo moving into a bigger role, Riley Quick, an injury guy.
Who's hurt? Who was hurt last we saw?
Right, correct. Yeah, injury guy. JD Thompson maybe at Vanderbilt. So, I mean, that's just a handful of names. Who of that group excites you?
And are all those just returning players? Not all of those are draft eligible, or all those names draft eligible?
I don't know if they are or not. Like I didn't spot check. Yeah. They feel for the most part
draft
eligible. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if Gackle was draft eligible sophomore. That's the other thing with the modern day, right? A lot of these kids are the draft being later.
Yeah, he may not be.
The draft being later, though, brings more kids into that 45-day rule of being eligible for the draft as a sophomore. I would say the first name you said that excites me is Gabe Gackle. I just think that stuff just jumps off the screen when you watch it in person. It's it's real swinging. It's 2 swing and miss pitches with a feel for a third. Like Gackle impressed me. I tell you what, McIlvain at the end of the year really impressed me at Vanderbilt. Like that's a name. It's Ethan? Ethan McIlvain. I wanted to say Chris, but that was his brother. And JD Thompson. I think in that regard, I think Vanderbilt has 2 names to definitely circle on that list. So those would probably be my top 3. Like, Russell and Shores certainly flash first round stuff. It's crazy. Like I hadn't thought of Jay Shores because he's basically missed 2 years.
Yeah,
I mean,
year and a half.
Really missed 2 years. Yeah. So Sadeo certainly finished strong. We'll see what he's got coming back. Well, you mentioned Root. He's going to be interesting. I think Liam Doyle is going to be interesting. There's, like we said, I think the Power 5 group is more interesting and less famous. But I think one thing this portal has allowed for us, there's going to be some arms enter the league that have no name recognition, but these coaching staffs have done a very good job of identifying. I think about the kid Tennessee got from Kennesaw State, who I'm drawing a blank on.
Tanner Franklin.
Tanner Franklin, like you watch him throw an inning and you're like, okay, that's pretty interesting. It looks a little Dolander-like when you watch the way the fastball profiles. So I think you listed a very healthy group of names that I think have a chance to really, be all SEC potential first round kind of arms. But I also think this year, maybe more than ever, there's going to be some portal kids that pop up that didn't have a whole lot of cachet that we go, wow, that's a big time arm.
Yeah. Well, Joe mentioned Ryan Prager, who came back, right? And that was kind of a surprise. And then, Kentucky gets Tyler Bell to school. These are early round picks that, almost no one at that level, goes to college. What do you make of that? I mean, and it not just them. There were some guys who could have been taken at that level who just took themselves out completely. Is this something different? Is this kind of a new trend that we're seeing compared to maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I think it's really interesting. I think Prager is one of those that, and I am completely speculating here, he wouldn't shock me if he's just a kid that was so ingrained in the school and the university that he's just like, I feel like we can win the national championship. I want to be a part of that. NIL is probably paying him not too far off of what he was going to get in pro ball. Heck, it might be apples to apples for all I know. You never know down there, right? And he's just like, I'm going to get my degree. I want to go win a national championship. And if pro ball's mad at me, I've already put as much money in my pocket as I was going to anyway. And if I'm good enough, pro ball's not going to be mad at me a year and a half from now. If I'm good enough, I'm going to be good enough, right? So I think that was just a mature kid deciding what he thinks is best for him. And what I'm excited about is the game now offers you, 30 years ago, Peyton Manning could say, I want to go back for my senior year of college football. And pro football is just going to have to wait. Tim Duncan could go back and say, I'm going to play 4 years of college basketball. And that'll be there for me when I'm ready. In baseball, you're going to keep paying for school and you're going to turn down this money. And like now these kids actually have options. I was a kid that loved college enough. Like I would have liked to legitimately have an option to go back. I'm not saying I would have, but I would have enjoyed the option of it. So anyway, I think that's cool. I think Tyler Bell is the kind of kid that, who knows how the numbers went down with Tampa Bay. If you read the articles, it kind of sounded like maybe they didn't get to his slot. And he was kind of like, I told y'all I was going to take slot. And if you're not going to get the slot, I told y'all what I was, So that one and I'm sure Nick did a great job of saying, hey, bro, if you're the 53rd pick in whatever it was, 35th pick, whatever, like, come be the third pick, come be the first pick, come be the fifth pick. You're going to make 5 times as much money, and we're going to go. And I think he's another draft eligible sophomore kid. So,
Yes.
But again, Kentucky could probably lighten that risk, right? Like, hey, man, we got some real money here for you. Yeah, it's not exactly what pro ball is going to give you, but it ain't nothing either. So I think that's, I just think that's the times we're living in. And I don't think that's going to be, I don't think those are the last times we see those things now moving forward, especially when you talk about full scholarships. And college baseball is not slowing down. Like, I mean, the product on the field is just getting better and better and better. And so with that, I think we're going to see more and more of these decisions.
I ran into, it's funny you say that, because I ran into somebody the other day here in town that, he's a sports fan, but he's not like locked in, especially not on college baseball. And I say friend, guy, just an acquaintance. And he asked me what I did, and I told him, and he's like, oh, SEC, that's like big league baseball, isn't it, at this point? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's funny you say that. On the draft thing Mark just asked, I think two things can be true at the same time. And I think, it is a trend. I agree. And I think, Berkey, to your point, it's only going to increase as we get full scholarships plus NIL money. We can put together a pretty good package. I think the other thing is, though, you can find, like, every player has their own individual reasons that can be looked at as like, well, this was a special case, right? Like, you might be right about Prager. He just wants to be an Aggie again. Tyler Bell supposedly, and I don't know because I don't follow it that closely, but supposedly didn't hit great on the showcase circuit this last year. And so it's like maybe the Rays looked at it as a way to like buy low on him a little bit. And, so like, I think two things are true where these college teams are benefiting from special cases that make sense for the player. And also, yes, I do think we are seeing a larger trend.
And the players have never had more leverage. So these teams, and that's why you see less high school players being taken. Number one, the college game is preparing players so well for the big leagues. But number two, like, they have a lot of leverage. Like, the schools are going to pay them. They're going to school for free. They're going to be famous if they're going to a big school. Like, they're going to be, in the baseball world, famous. So it's like, why would I take a number that I told you I wouldn't sign for? Why would I do that?
Yeah. Another big picture topic here for you, Burke. We've talked about, you and I have talked about this. I think we've talked about it with Mark as a group. Saying first, so the listeners understand, none of us here are scientists. We're not here to talk about drag and the effects of the baseball and what have you, because that's not our wheelhouse. But what's your hunch? Have home runs peaked? Like, is it just maybe that Kaggs and Condon maybe just set the bar so high that, and obviously Christian Moore had a lot of home runs, whatever. I don't know how we'd necessarily say one way or the other, but just your hunch. Like, are we at a peak, or are we looking at like Brandon Larson next year?
No, I don't think we'll see 40. I do think we just ushered out extremely gifted group of hitters. I do think that. That being said, I mean, just look at A&M next year. They got Grohovac and Laviolette on the same team, who both hit in the 20s, and Laviolette, 28 or 29. So, and really kind of limped in with 28. You know what I mean? So, we could see another couple in the 30s. That wouldn't shock me at all. I had a SEC hitter in my cage the other day, and I was asking him about the balls, and he was like, it's crazy. Like, he's just been back on campus hitting this summer some. And he was like, some days we hit with the SEC balls, some days we don't. And he's like, when we hit with the SEC balls, it's very different. The truth is, if the balls continue to stay as live as they are, we're still going to, because, this is 21, 22, 23, 24. This is really a post-COVID trend of the 20 home run season being a very normal thing. So now, are we going to see mid to high 30s every year? I think that, Christian Moore, Jack Caglione, and Charlie Condon are special home run hitters. So, but I do think the 20 plateau will be achieved by another 6 or 8, 10 hitters this year. Again, I don't think that's going anywhere.
Well, Burke, Joe and I have been kind of looking ahead to next year, putting some rosters together, some potential lineups, and just with our research, A&M looks like the preseason number one. Tell us why we're wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't see how you could go with anybody else but them first.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is I think LSU is going to be a very staunch contender for that. I think Tennessee put together a very good roster, maybe a little less known with a few of their pieces, but I think if you've looked at them, there's some, like we just talked about with Tanner Franklin, right? So to me, it feels like those three, as far as the SEC is concerned. I think Florida is going to be very, very good. They return a ton of power, which like it or not, look at the teams that advanced the farthest last year. They all hit the most home runs, So, it feels like it's those four, but probably A&M and Florida have the most known commodities back. But I think Tennessee and LSU did probably the most in the portal. And a lot of that you're just going off to like the track record of those two coaching staffs.
Yeah.
So I would put those four at the top as we sit here in August. Where do you guys stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, we went with A&M, and then after that, I think it's LSU, it's Florida, it's Georgia, a team you didn't mention. I really like what they've done in the portal. Plus, their entire rotation's back. Their top 4 starters are back. It's if those transfers come through in the bullpen, I really like where they are. They'll be deeper than they were on the mound this year. Obviously, Arkansas, Tennessee. I really like both of those pitching staffs. The question is, they both lost a lot of production, and Arkansas didn't have a ton to lose. Man, the offense was really the issue. So
I would have to see Arkansas hit before I put them up at the top. The Georgia piece is a little bit of we return all our pitchers. Is that great news, or is that great news, or is that I think Colton Smith could be fantastic. He kind of finished slow. He had some incredible moments in the middle.
Yeah.
And
Finley,
to me,
Finley was good.
Yeah, and Leighton Finley, I'm a big fan. I think, and he's got a chance. I think Leighton Finley got a chance to be a first-round pick, like the body and the stuff. And maybe Smith too. Certainly top 3 rounders, both those kids, I would think. But I just think not just Charlie Condon, but I think Corey Collins. You look at the combination of, you could easily say, well, Tennessee lost Blake Burke and Christian Moore. Yes. But I think, amongst others, it feels like they did more to replace that than Georgia did to replace their 2. And maybe I missed some pickups along the way. But I would put Tennessee ahead of Georgia on my pecking order unless there's some offense that I missed in there. Did they pick up some pieces that I missed? Yeah,
well, I mean, Ryan Black from UTA is going to be I think he's going to be a dude. Christian
it's probably
Adams,
a top 50, top 60 pick, Ryan Black from UT Arlington.
Okay, yeah, I did miss that. And I think Trey Phelps is going to be a star.
Yes. That's part of it. Part of the
equation. Once you get past the Laviolette Grahovac level of SEC Player of the Year guy, like Trey Phelps is right there for me.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And Phelps is as good a guess as any. Maybe Shelton. You could see Shelton having a monster year. Yeah, LeBron for sure. I could even see a kid like Luke Heyman having a monster year. I feel like he's way better than he played in spurts last year. But yeah, you're right. It's Laviolette and Grahovac, and then kind of your best guess. But Trey Phelps, the way he finished, the way he looked this summer, yeah, you're right. I'm probably shortchanging Georgia.
Yeah, it's really impressive couple of year turnaround. For one of the things I think that stands out for me about Georgia is, I mean, look at that coaching staff. Will Coggin was at Kentucky 2 years ago. Nick Amorati was at Kentucky last year, and they're pulling a similar type of player to what Kentucky's pulling. And Kentucky's still getting good ball players in the portal, but Georgia's feel like they're just a little bit better at this point. And I think when you're talking about these small margins in the SEC, that kind of stuff can matter.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Kentucky and Emirati is a huge piece of this. They have put together a portal formula that is the envy of a lot of people. And, when people tell me that we don't have NIL, I said, well, I would look at what Virginia and Kentucky are doing. Now, I do think Kentucky has since made a pretty big jump in their NIL. But there's 2 teams in the country that have been to Omaha 3 of the last 4 years. Tennessee, and everybody rolls their eyes, of course, Tennessee, which, to be fair, a lot of what Tennessee did over the last 4 years was homegrown.
Right.
That doesn't mean they don't have a lot of money to spend, but a lot of that was homegrown. But the other one's Virginia. And you talk about homegrown dudes and then very wise, under-the-radar portal pickups. Like Virginia is the standard as far as that's concerned, to me.
Yeah, just a never-ending line of what looks like stock right-handers from schools that, don't stand out to you, that, Brian Edgington and Brian Gursky, he was a left-hander, but, my point there. But yeah. Guys that I'm like, I don't know if they can pitch here. And then it turns out they get them to Omaha.
Yeah, because the position player group is so good, which are kids they recruited, signed, and developed.
Right.
Right. So I just think the more we obsess over the portal, it's easy to lose sight of, Tennessee won the national championship with 1 portal hitter and really 2 meaningful portal pitchers, Causey and Snead.
Yeah.
You had Stamos, but Stamos, sometimes he was getting one out, right? But it was really Snead and Causey and Amick. Yeah. And I'm not sure changing those 3 guys, they probably wouldn't have won it all without them, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also cause you to lose sight of the fact the rest of that team are all homegrown players, So,
and really what they did this year, they didn't add a ton of volume. It's that they were really selective and brought in, 3 or 4, or I guess 4 or 5 that should, pay dividends, right? They're coming in to star, not start.
And I still think that's going to be the crux of every great program moving forward. I still think it's going to be how, and now with only 34 bodies on campus, how well do you evaluate? How well do you evaluate and develop? Like, that's going to really become the standard.
Yeah. Covered a lot of ground there, getting us excited for as we start to head into fall baseball here in not too much longer and what we might see on the field soon. ESPN's Chris Burke. Chris, I appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Always fun.
That'll do it for this edition of Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. Thank you to Pitch Logic for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover. Thank you to Mark, as always, for joining me. Thank you to Chris Burke for joining us today. We will talk